When you went to Pharm school, you were taught a little bit of different diseases, and you know about the thing called the strep throat. And you probably were taught the drug of choice to treat strep throat was penicillin. Is that true?
Yes, you could say that.
Okay, it's about $10 right now wholesale to treat it.
Roughly.
Mm-hmm. You could also use generic ampicillin, and that's probably in the same ballpark. Is that true?
Yes.
And you could even use a first-generation syphilis like Keflex. It's a little bit more, maybe about $15 to $20 range, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, but that's the drugs of choice. So anything else you use, unless they're allergic to penicillin, it's not considered the drug of choice. That means it wasn't meant to be used for that. And we're worried about a new thing happening to resistance of antibiotics. So if you use a very powerful antibiotic for something that could cure the simple cure, inexpensive cure, we might be producing a resistance in the community. And you're now hearing about multiple resistant Staph aureus, that staph infection. Some of it's man-made because we're hitting these bugs with a lot of very sophisticated stuff. They're mutating to survive, like you would survive in a new type of climate. You would try to mutate to survive against that climate. Now, some of the more expensive antibiotics, which are not meant to be the drug of choice of penicillin, Levaquin. How expensive is Levaquin?
It's very expensive. I don't recall the actual...
It's a couple $100 it could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Zithromax, which is not a drug of choice for strep throat, because it's a macrolide. That means it doesn't even kill it. It prevents it from growing. So there's up to one study, 48% resistance. That's about $75, isn't it?
The brand name would be, yes.
And the generic is how little now?
I'm sure it's roughly around the $25 to $30 range.
But in other words, it's not even a drug of choice. It's meant for maybe a second or third line medicine. So a $10, $15 drug of choice, works well. And the $200 one, creating resistance, is not the drug of choice, and it's written by a lot of doctors. We don't know why.
Well, that's what we see in our setting. We see mostly more expensive, newer products being dispensed and written for. The reason for that is, it could be a lot of it has to do with, who the doctor sees, sales reps, and, that they want their drug to be pushed. But the older products, we do not see as much because of that reason. And most likely because they're not being detailed, and ultimately the sales force is out there from the pharmaceutical company trying to push their own products.
I had a weekend a couple of months ago, running for penicillin liquid, and I was told by a couple of farms that we don't stock it anymore because we have no calls for it. I said, excuse me?
That's very true.
I penicillin liquid, and so I wrote for Keflex, and they weren't sure they had that in stock, and finally after I yelled and screamed, they found it.
Right.
Okay, it really bothered me a little bit. These are the drugs of choice. What happened? Why are we going to these $200 a month stuff? And MRSA, which is out there in the news, some kid died in Brooklyn, someone Texas, a few other places. It's a man-made disease to some degree because these bugs are doing what they're meant to. They're around. They don't know they're going to kill people. They have to survive, so they mutate.
Right, they mutate. But just as they're mutating for the newer drugs, they have mutated for the penicillin, and there's many penicillin-resistant forms out there as well.
But not strep. There's not been one strain we have found for a strep throat that penicillin can't hit. The reason it fails is usually parent or the individual doesn't take it for the full 10-day course.
Right.
Or they can have something in the mouth, a thing called staph, that could be living there, causing no havoc, but it can deactivate the penicillin. That's why sometimes a first-generation cephalosporin, like the old Keflex was used, it knocked out the staph, and then the killing power against the strep wasn't interfered with something that can knock it out of.
Well, that's part of the reason why the newer products are being used, because of compliance. Many parents, let's say, or even adults that need to take a product, 3 to 4 times a day, they skip doses, they do not complete the therapy, and that's a big issue. When you have the newer products, the nice thing about them is usually once-a-day dosing, and that helps a lot with compliance.
Well, Keflex and ampicillin can be given twice a day now. It's been studied by studies, so twice a day is not a big issue, so I can't see why people go to it. And according to an AOL little blurb 2 months ago, the number one profession in this country today financially was drug reps.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying drug reps are bad, but when I first was in practice, most of them were pharmacists,
Right.
highly trained. They were very careful what they said. I find some of them come today, they're more trying to become my friend than really know the product. There were some of the companies, the Merck rep in particular, I have very professional, very careful, don't step over the line. Some of the other companies have done that good job of doing that, yet I don't want to mention names, have done a terrible job. The rep comes in, doesn't even know the side effects of their own product, and I'm amazed they can try to talk to a former pharmacist about a product, and they don't know that there is a major complication to the drug. I know they want to make sales. I don't want to make diffs. So there's a little balance that we try to check out there. Because every drug, there are good effects and bad effects. And the biggest check I can have is your local pharmacist. Because I expect a call, because maybe I could have been busy, maybe I didn't think correctly, he might see something, bring it to my little ears, and say, you know something, I'm glad you gave me a call, I didn't really think about that, I wasn't aware they were using this, or they had a problem in the past they didn't tell me about. And that's a good partnership that I hope that gets even better. If the new 7-year program goes in effect, do you know what they're going to add to it to make a pharmacist a better pharmacist?
That I can't tell you, but there must be so much information out there that they need to increase the time. Most of the pharmacist training now is more on a clinical basis, so they're more aware.
But by using it, that's the problem.
Well, the problem is that they're not going to use it. If they're going to go into the retail setting, they most likely will not use it. They need to go into the hospital setting or the clinical setting to actually use what they learned.
And it still bothers me that most doctors still go back to that one little course they had in medical school, and now, if they don't keep up, and their source of information is a drug rep who's trying to make sales, I don't know that's a good combination right now, is it?
Well, you know, the drug reps have their job because they need to get their market share up, and that's why they're out there pushing for their drugs.